Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. At the end of this video, I have an announcement for you guys. So let's get on with the video. The story is called Alice Isn't Dead. My mother always said that my inability to ask for help would be the death of me. So when I was jumped and stabbed one night, it wasn't a surprise that I never went to the hospital. I remember that night very clearly. I was going to the movie theater, a local small one, that was showing Silence of Lamb. I had never felt particularly scared around dark topics. In fact, I would even say I had a peculiar for the Gustavik massacres. As a young child, I suffered from schizophrenia, causing vivid hallucinations and dreams. Then, when I was older, maybe 13, people always told me I was a sort of bait and switch. I dressed in what most people would call feral and that girly girls wear, but I like wearing old-style dresses that went back down to my ankles. So when people realized that I was indeed obsessed with the Oscar, they would often flee the other way, sometimes literally. Most people consider me a sort of witch, a taboo, that no one would want to hang out with. For this reason, I was always lonely, sort of girl. So going to that movie, I was completely alone. This is important to the story. I promise. It was about 6 o'clock, if I remember correctly. I was walking down the sidewalk towards the movie theater. The neon signs were flickering on and off, either due to low budget or more ghost paranormal stuff. My shoes made a faint rhythm tapping sound on the concrete as I approached the theater. I was nearing the corner about a block away from my destination when someone grabbed me by my hair. I was yanked into another direction by whatever had just grabbed me. I remember turning around, and the person who grabbed me was Kirk. Kirk was a kid who went to the same high school as me. He was a notorious bully and often picked on me for unusual personality. I hated him, but I was too afraid to say anything, for a fear of my mouthness might land a large bruise. I remember saying to him, "Please, what do you want? I'm just trying to see a movie." Kirk pulled something out of his pocket. I couldn't see it much in the darkness of the street alley, and he had pulled into but he brought it closer to my face, and I realized it was a Swiss Army knife. I started panicking. I had no idea what he was going to do with that knife, but I was afraid. Once he had pulled that same knife on a girl in my class. She had gone to the hospital after he had carved his own initials into her chest. Kirk was a horrible person. I hated him, but I was frozen with fear. Kirk said he was going to make me pay. I asked him why. Why was he going to do this? Kirk didn't answer. Before I had time to say another word, he drove my body into the ground, making me hit the concrete and knocking all the air out of me. I was trying to yell for help, but all that came out of me was a cough. Kirk knelt down, and well, you can infer the rest. He stabbed me with the knife several times, twice in the chest, 3 times in the stomach. I felt the knife puncture my skin, and let me tell you, a stab wound is not like how movies portray them. The knife doesn't go in smoothly, only a small amount of blood trickles out. No, when you get stabbed, there's a moment where your skin has been a little give, and then a sticking noise as the knife goes into you. The blood splues everywhere on the killer's face, all over the victim as well, and the pain, unimaginable searing pain. It felt like it rised through my entire body, making me black out. Only a portion of the killer's face is still visible. I saw Kirk leave, wiping his hands on his black pants and running away, my blood still on his shirt. I was still breathing. I had been stabbed 5 times, and I was still breathing. I knew I had to get myself to the hospital, but at the same time, well, didn't the doctors already have enough on their plate? Didn't they have patients to treat? If I go there, someone else could die while I get fixed. No, I can't go to the hospital, I thought to myself, so I didn't. For 5 minutes, I laid there in the alleyway, bleeding and crying and fighting the pain that has taken a hold of my body. I felt hot tears steaming down my cheek as my fingers twitched. My breathing became slower and slower. This is it, I thought to myself. Everything I have done in my life. It's all led to this. I hope I go to heaven and eventually my breathing stops altogether. Then I was definitely silent. but for some reason, I was still alive. No, alive isn't my word for it. Suddenly, I was standing over my dead body, looking down at it. Blood stained the front of my dress. What once had been a lavender color was now a dark crimson color. I stepped away from my body, panic sticking. I backed against the wall, trying to get as far away from the corpse as possible. No, not the corpse, my corpse. My corpse, that's a funny thing to think about, isn't it? One moment you're alive and next you are not. This is no signal for blinding light or angels. It's just one moment alive and next dead. Anyway, I had entered some sort of angelic state, I assumed. I was always a very religious girl growing up in a very Christian family. So naturally, when I saw myself standing above my own dead body, I assumed I had been reincarnated as some kind of angel. Unfortunately, this is not the case. I backed out the alleyway, unable to take my eyes off my own cadaver. Eventually, I turned the corner and walked out into the street. It was like nothing had happened. People were still going about their evening, still walking and talking, completely unaware that a girl had just been stabbed to death. It looked like time has passed through, maybe 3 hours. The sky darkened, although the amount of pollination blocked out the sign of the stars in the sky. I assumed someone would take notice of a bloodstained dress, but such as not the case. I walked aimlessly among the crowd, slowly wandering home. The truth was, I was afraid to return home. I was confused and scared, and I knew that my parents didn't even know that their baby girl had just been killed. I was freaking out, but slowly and surely I made my way to my small apartment. The steps of the building still the same as they always were. I eventually made my way to the elevator, stepping in with people who barely took notice of me. It was like they were simply staring right through me. I waited patiently as the lift made its slowly journey up to the 4th floor, where my residence was. I opened the door to my parents' apartment. My mother and father were talking. They looked concerned. "Alice hasn't returned from the theater yet," they said. "I hope she's all right," said my father, wringing his hands through until his knuckles went white. I felt tears streaming down my eyes as I watched my parents talk unknowingly about my death. Just a few hours before, it's agony, to watch your own parents cry in front of you. Suddenly, all the confidence and hesitation you had to put them melt away, and the real of them showed through. It's sort of confusing as well to see their human side. They put out missing posters the next day, filed a missing person report, and waited. I watched them cry and hug each other. I watched my own parents devastated by their disappearance. A couple of days later, they found my body. My parents were even more grief-stricken. My mother was weeping day after day, while my father became livid and started drinking again. All the while, I could do nothing but stand by their side. My mother and father never noticed me when I comforted them, but that made me sad. Over the time, my parents grew older and older. I watched the entire thing through. My mother died of cancer at age 80. My father died a couple of years after that from alcohol poisoning. I was sad, but there was part of me deep down that was relieved. I wouldn't have to see my parents moan anymore. But part of me that they would return like I had, but they never did. Day after day, I waited patiently by the sofa. Days turned into months and into years. Eventually, my new family moved in, and they had a little girl. Her name was Daisy. She went to a sweet girl and only 11 at the time. I took a liking to her, as I could sort of see myself in her. She was a bookish like I was, and apparently from ghost stories and Victorian-era culture. I watched her for a couple months from the door of her bedroom. One day, I got too close. Daisy noticed me for the first time. I had never ever seen anyone acknowledge me since my death 5 years ago. No one ever. But Daisy somehow saw me. I explained my name was Alice and that I had to live here before I died. She said that she heard about some ghost stories from her friends about me. She also told me that my dress was pretty. After that, we became fast friends. I was Daisy's imaginary friend, but for a while that was all I needed. But then I became jealous. Daisy always was hanging out with her friends, her mother, father, and brother. She didn't spend as much time with me anymore. One day when I asked, Daisy simply said the family was real and that I was not. I became resentful of Daisy, making things in the house suddenly worsen by moving items and breaking things without family knowing. Daisy, of course, knows everything after she stopped talking to me completely, and I felt sad. I was no longer resentful. I wanted my old friends back. Daisy was the only person I had been able to talk to in years. In my whole life until now, she was gone too. I had never had a real friend in my life, but the moment I got one, I imaginally pushed her away. I began to cry. I cried for days, just like my parents. I now understood the pain of losing someone dear to you. I watched in agony as Daisy laughed and played with her family day after day after day. Eventually, I became devastated, a plan, a way to get Daisy to be my friend forever. When the time finally came and the night was right, I executed my plan. Daisy was asleep in her room, snoring softly from the other side of the hallway. I slowly walked to the kitchen and took out the biggest kitchen knife the family owned. I quietly walked to Daisy's brother's room. I opened the door slowly, making sure the boy did not wake up. I walked over to the side of his crib. The boy was maybe about 3 years old, still tiny. I inhaled deeply. I stabbed him. He didn't cry or scream as I anticipated. He just died, bled out just as I had. I looked down at the blood-soaked my palms, and I looked at the blood-soaked the crib, dripping slowly onto the floor. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. I went to the next room and stabbed both adults. Their blood looked the same as well. The next morning, when Daisy woke up, she thought everyone was sleeping late. Even her brother, who usually cries in the morning, was quiet. I watched as Daisy ran to her parents' room down the hall, excited, yelling that she had woken up early this time. I watched as she pulled open the door and only to see her throwing sight in front of her. Her parents' bodies, both dragged to the front of the bed, propped upright, showing off the stab wounds in the abdomen of the stomach. I watched in satisfaction as she cried out in horror, bursting into tears. She sobbed and hugged her parents' bodies. She turned around. I think Daisy knew I had done this. Why? Why did you do this? She cried out to me. To be with you forever, I replied. And now there's no one in our way. Daisy left me soon after that. Now I had no one again. So dear readers, would you like to be my friend? Okay guys, so I really hope you enjoyed this video. So at the beginning of this video, I told you guys I had a special announcement for you guys. So the special announcement, I finally got a Discord, guys. I'm going to link that below for you guys to join that. And also my second channel will be linked below for you guys to subscribe to that. And subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up for more videos like this. And I'll see you guys in my next video.